And welcome to winemastery.co.uk. My name's John Lightfoot. This is
Tom Thornton.
This is
Chris.
And of course this is
John Murphy.
And we're here to tell you all about wine, hopefully help you find the wine, if not the wines, that you will absolutely love to devour. That glass that when you get home you pour the bottle into it and you go glug, 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 and you'll smell it. You'll smell that divine that divine odour coming from it, and you'll think, first sip, hopefully we're going to help you find that glass of wine that you're really going to enjoy. And as a process, and in the way of doing this, we've got two guys here that are beginning their wine journey, just starting off in learning about wine. We thought, what better way to help you but is to have two people that are actually doing exactly what you're doing, finding out about wine, starting off their journey, and let them ask some questions of us. And of course, I'm the dummy, but John, I'm sure, will be able to answer, and I'll pretend in the meantime.
Yeah, we'll see.
So Tom, we'll start with you. What sort of questions have you have in terms of starting this journey?
So obviously, as someone quite early in their wine tasting career, obviously, how do you kind of determine a nice wine? Really, what flavours do you look for, and things like that?
It's a very tough question that anyway, because it's all very subjective, and I always say that is very subjective. It's basically just trial and error. You're just going to get stuck in there. But I think one thing I will always say is always try something different, because sometimes people will get stuck on, let's say for instance, like Cabernet Sauvignon. And I know what it's like. We've all been there, where you find a wine that you really like, and you think, well, and then you see the wine next to it, and you think, well, I've not tried that. Will I take a chance? But I'd always say take that chance, have a go, just trying something different every time. And even and price doesn't massively come into it either. But I mean, if you're taking a bottle of wine home every night, or every other night, you get to try a fair amount, because there's no such thing as like a bad wine. Just some are better than others, is what we say.
So you're saying there's kind of no like beginner wines, there's no kind of intermediate wines, there's no experienced wines?
Yeah, well, you could go, I mean, for your beginner wines, I'd probably stick with things which are, like the single varietal, so like a Cabernet Sauvignon, a Shiraz, Pinot Noir, that kind of thing. And then as you start getting on there, you will find things, generally, it's usually French, Italian, the kind of old world. They have what they call like the big boys, so some of these Bordeaux, where perhaps you wouldn't initially appreciate. You've got to remember as well, as you go on your wine journey, your taste buds change. Well, your taste buds change anyway, and well, they don't change, they kind of die off, so they need more stimulation. So you'll find, I found it definitely as a youngster, I used to like, very light, easy wines. Then as it got further on, I wanted something that would hurt. Do you know what I mean? Some of those big full-bodied beasts that kind of take the gums back off your teeth. I like those. But yeah, you look at your Bordeaux, they're probably more, what's the word to describe them? More complex and the more subtle. So it's harder to find the subtle flavours in there. But once you've got a certain expertise on there, then you'll start recognising that's what the flavour is. That's what that is. But in the beginning, it's tough. You've just got to throw yourself in there and drink as much as you can.
When you say a single varietal wine, what exactly do you mean by?
Like a single varietal would be like a Cabernet Sauvignon just on its own, a Shiraz just on its own, because they do a lot of blends. You can get a lot of Shiraz Cab blends, and especially like a Bordeaux. The Bordeaux just basically is the region. They will definitely have a blend of grapes in there. Usually Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot. And again, yeah, because the blends, they combine these two kind of, obviously the two styles, so you're getting them both styles and some complement each other really well. Like a Cabernet Shiraz, they work together very, very well, and Cabernet and Merlot.
Can I take an issue with you in terms of price though? You said the price doesn't matter. I mean, if you've got a wine that costs £2 and you like it, absolutely price doesn't matter. But if you're trying to experiment, I would suggest actually you don't sort of go for the £3–4. You do up it a little bit, because actually the amount of tax you pay, so and if you look at the tax that you have to pay on a bottle of wine in the UK, the amount you're actually paying for the wine is very small. So if you pay an extra couple of quid and then you're just paying for the wine rather the tax stays the same, you actually do tend to get a lot better quality. So in the experience I used to buy before going down this journey, I used to go on a sort of buying the cheapest possible, whatever was on offer. And I have now got to sort of saying, well, actually, I think in order to get a decent wine, I probably need to be paying around about £7 to £10 in order to get a chance of getting a decent wine.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that for one moment. But I think you maybe have to go through that stage of drinking the poorer wine to then getting up to that one. But yeah, you are right. If you're wanting something classy, inevitably you do have to pay more.
Yeah,
I would say. But then again, as you said at the beginning there, if a bottle of wine is £3 and you like it, it's a good bottle.
Absolutely.
Because it's all very personal and subjective.
It is always goes. I think the other thing though to think of is that the thing that always frustrated me was I'd buy a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon and then I'd buy another bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon, and the first one I'd like and the second one I wouldn't. And then it's like, well, how do I deal with this? How do I deal with this? Because, you know, do I like Cabernet Sauvignon or do I not? Because
well, it's, again, different areas in the world grow them differently. They have the signature grape of certain, like for instance Shiraz, that's the signature grape of Australia, in that they grow the best Shiraz in the world. So you might have a Shiraz from Australia that you really like, and then you might get one from South Africa, which, although it's the same grape, it's a different style almost. That's why it is a minefield, but it's good fun. It's trial and error, you know. You get to find out. You almost know when you know, you look at the bottle and you say, oh, it's a South African Shiraz. I know the South African is a little bit softer than the Australian. So what do you want this evening? Do you want that soft, easy Shiraz, or do you want that big, bitey Shiraz?
Is it a good idea? So often I go around the supermarket and I look for the ones that are kind of gold award winners and things like that. Is that a good idea to do?
Yeah, definitely. They don't get awards by not being good. And you know, as much as you know, I'm not a fan of supermarkets only because of what I do, you know, but they do have some cracking. On our journey, we found some absolutely stonking wines, haven't we?
Yeah.
And at a very good price as well. But yeah, if you look at the ones that have had awards, because these, you know, they're not allowed to put something like that on unless it has been, you know, won some very good awards. And these people know what they're talking about. I mean, these people go deciding the wines for the supermarkets. These guys are really at the top of their game.
And I think probably the other thing you can do is if you go, you know, sort of, rather than buying everything from the supermarket, if you buy 1 or 2 bottles from an independent, you can go and ask the guy, you know, or the lady that's behind the counter, and they'll probably give you some advice. You tell them the sort of wines you like, and they'll be able to actually advise you. And if you don't quite like that, then they'll say, you know, what didn't you like about it, and they'll guide you to another bottle. So I'm not saying you necessarily have to buy, you know, because obviously, you know, the independents do tend to be slightly more expensive, but probably that's because, you know, of the service that you get from them, and it may well be worth investing in sort of your local independent reseller and talking to them, and they'll probably be able to guide you down the path a little bit easier.
Yeah, that is, and you know what as well, that is quite nice for us. You know, in the supermarket, yeah, they've got a fantastic selection. I can't knock them. They've got some really good wine at very good price as well. But you know, I mean, if you look on there, they've all got just shelf talkers which give you a description. The description can be quite generic. You know, you don't really know what you're getting into. And again, it's that thing, you know, when it says on the back it tastes like cherries and raspberries, and you're thinking, I'm not tasting cherries and raspberries. People think they're doing it wrong when you're not. You're on a Pinot discount, but you know, when you do come to an independent, and this every independent will do this because we have a passion for it. If you said, you know, I like Cabernet Sauvignon, I'm not so keen on Shiraz kind of thing, and you give us a brief explanation of what you like, then it's a really nice job for us to find something you like. I mean, we might not always get it right first time, but when we do get it right, it's really heartwarming. I say I was in a pub not so long ago, and some fella came up to me and he was like, that Shiraz, no, it was a Chardonnay, he said, and it was scary as well. It was a big bloke, and he came up, hey, that Chardonnay you recommend, bloody great. And I thought, you know, it was just nice and heartwarming. They found something that he said at the beginning of the video that you really love.
Yeah, and I think some of the big brands, the really sort of massive brands in the world. I was listening to a podcast, and listening to someone that used to work for a massive brand, one of the massive American brands, and they were saying that they actually were in the marketing department and they had to write the description, and they weren't allowed to taste it. They weren't given any to taste. They were just told to write whatever that should be.
Right, yeah.
So the point I'm trying to make there is actually don't be discouraged. If you read on the back of the label you should be tasting cherry and, you know, almond or whatever, and you don't taste it, maybe actually that's
it's not even that,
yeah, it's just a load of BS, and it's not there in any case. I think the other thing is, if you can go to some wine tastings again, and quite a lot of independents do it, and I think supermarkets do on occasion, you go to wine tastings and you can be led by someone that can taste it, because quite often with John, very often I know there's a taste, and as soon as he says it's cherry, I go, oh, yeah, that's it, or it's leather or whatever. Once he says it, I can actually sort of log on to it, but actually trying to find that sort of what it is on my own mind is really difficult.
I mean, I still have that problem as well. You know, sometimes we've said many times, you know, you've got the flavour and you know what it is, but you can't put your finger exactly on it, and then somebody else, like you say, says it, and immediately you see a log on, you hook it straight into it. But then after that, you can nearly just taste that and nothing more. You know, he's finding those intricacies in there. And as I say, I'm of a level, but there are people who've got much more skill than me, and like John says, going to wine tastings are excellent. because there's no real obligation to be buying these things, and because these people want, exactly like we're doing, they want you to try it, and they're excited to try it, and they're excited to find the one that you're going to love. So going to the independents, or just any tasting in general, there's loads of them around. I do loads. They're always good fun, I can assure you.
Chris, have you got any questions, or you happy with the way the conversation's going at the moment?
Well, yeah, I'm happy. There's a lot of information overload, so as a complete novice myself, I'm more like, that's red, that one's white, and I know roses, kind of like, to me, halfway house. So, any guidance that you can offer is all good.
Again, sometimes you don't really need to know too much as well. If you know you like red and white, and well, at least you know the difference there. That's the first step, isn't it?
Starter. It's a starter. Yeah, at least you know it's wine. That's a starter. You got another question for us, Tom?
Yeah. So the next question would be, so obviously looking at restaurant menus and all that kind of thing. How can you kind of look at value for money in terms of the restaurant menu? Because I often kind of look at a menu and I think, I can't go for the cheapest one.
Yeah.
You look a bit stingy. And then I often go for the ones in between. So just how do you kind of read a restaurant menu and kind of what do you often go for to get the money?
Again, it's not a tough one, because every restaurant they play different games. I would say 9 times out of 10 you see a lot of in the restaurants. A lot of people won't choose the most expensive. They always go for the next one down. So that one, the next one down, tends to be the one that they make the most money on. So it's not always the best wine to go for, but they know you're going to pick that wine, because a lot of people do that. A lot of people say avoid what they call the house wine, but I wouldn't. I mean, other than being a tight Yorkshireman, not quite as tight as John, but tight. But generally the house wine they have picked specifically because it is very, very good value. Again, these people are trying. They do exactly what we do. Where they're out trying, or people are bringing stuff to them, so they're not going to give you. Although it might be a better price, it'll still be a very good wine. But it completely depends on what I'm eating as to what I would get on the from the wine list. But yeah, don't be afraid to go for the cheaper wine. John isn't.
I always do.
No, but the views you have been selected for that very reason. Yeah, just go for it. You won't look like a cheapskate. Well, I always do. Depending on what it is, but yeah. But no, generally, there's no real good rule of thumb, but I would always try the house wine. I mean, generally, you're going to go through a couple of bottles anyway, aren't you? So just get one of those to start with.
Yeah, depending on whether you're driving or not, of course, but yeah.
I've heard about that, it's overrated.
You never drive?
No.
Never drive?
It's not for me.
Never drive when there's a glass involved?
No, definitely not. But yeah, there's no hard, fast answer to that, but I would just give it a go next time you're in a restaurant. Try their house wine and see what you think.
Okay. Does there another question leading on from that, or?
Nothing at the moment. Go on.
Like, with some waiters obviously often sort of suggest that you would try this certain wine.
Yeah, definitely.
Would you sort of believe that, or are they just like peddling that because it's got a good sort of margin on it?
It would depend. It would like most of the waiters, again, it's their job to have tried most of the food and the wines in there. What you really want, if you have a sommelier at these, which you do get in a lot of restaurants, these guys are the top. Well, they are very, very good. And the sommelier, again, is a fair few above me. They really know their stuff. They know what they're talking about. So if you have a real sommelier and he's recommending something, always go with that. If you're lucky enough to have a sommelier in the restaurant, I mean, your waiters should know as well. And it's only the unscrupulous ones that are trying to, I know what you mean, kind of flog, get rid of kind of thing. But no, the waiters should be. If it's a reputable restaurant, then they should be selling the exact wine that's going to go.
I disagree slightly actually, because a sommelier, excuse me, John.
No, go for it.
is going to be someone that's talking from a standpoint of experience.
Yeah.
And as we've said, that there are some wines that when you're starting, there's no point buying them, because actually you're not going to detect the sort of nuances in the wine when you're just starting off in the journey. So they're going to suggest what they believe and probably will be a very, very nice wine. But actually, if you're just starting off in your journey, you'll probably be paying more than you need to, because actually you're not going to appreciate.
But then he or she is going to suggest is the exact wine that's going to go with your meal. And this guy knows what that tastes like, and that is going to complement that meal perfectly. Yeah. So I'd say I would go with the sommelier, because I think honestly, even though regardless of he might be showing you that although you might be starting off in your wine journey, this is where you want to be ending up. And it's not just
I think people don't actually say, you wouldn't in a restaurant, I wouldn't in a restaurant when I sort of starting the journey say, well actually, I really know FA about wine, and so, I don't know what to choose. I mean, I'm guessing if you said that, they would obviously suggest. I think there is the danger that in some restaurants I've been to, having known a little bit now about wine, I have been in restaurants where they have suggested the more expensive bottle, which I believe to be unnecessary.
Okay.
but obviously that's me, need to be unnecessary.
Was it over £3? He's still hurting.
Well, it was when we were in Florida. I wanted a Zinfandel, but he was trying to sell me something else. The Zinfandel was $50 a bottle, which I thought was more than adequate.
Yeah.
And he was trying to sell me something that was $90 a bottle, and I really didn't. And I really enjoyed the wine. It was
Zinfandel.
yeah. So I think, you know, there is time to be concerned.
Yeah.
Ask for advice, but, you know, don't necessarily. I would not necessarily. The other thing I would say is that I would not now be worried about saying, I'm looking for something. It's very difficult if you're with a young lady and you're taking a young lady out to say this, of course. But if you know, if you're with friends and you're not worried about it, you say, well, actually, I'm looking for wine, but I'm not looking to pay any more than. And then they should be able to give you the best advice for that sort of price level. That's their job, to give you what you want at the price you can afford.
Yeah. Just coming back to obviously you mentioned that you have certain wines with certain food.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm kind of aware that you have with red meat you'd more than likely have red.
Yeah.
With fish you'd have white. What do you kind of tend to have in terms of food wise with rosé wine?
Like it would depend. Cause it's a very difficult one because it's very personal and again subjective. So what I might suggest necessarily might not work for yourself, and that's why it's the wine world is quite an unusual one because people can get away with a lot, as I'm sure you'll be aware. You know, when they're talking about wines, they're not necessarily saying it's. The way they describe it is probably what they are tasting, but it might not be what we're tasting. They do make it very flowery. There's a lot of kidology involved. They're almost selling a product, if you know what I mean. So they want to make it sound like that. So again, it's subjective. But personally, if I was with the rosé, you could easily have fish with the rosé. That'd be fun. You could easily have red meat with the rosé. Again, it's personally, it's a mood thing as well. It's what do you fancy at that time. You know, many times you're looking on the list and what you would usually get. Like Rioja is something that I always fall back on. I always fall back because I love Rioja. I could drink Rioja all day long if I was allowed, but they won't let me. But it is, you know, sometimes you look on the list and you think, oh, you know what, I quite fancy that big, like that Zinfandel. I want that to help. Or you just want something, you're on light and easy, so you just go for something light. It's very, very personal. Yeah, I know that didn't really answer your question. Sorry.
It's all about strength of flavours, and obviously if you start with white and then you go for rosé and you go for red, and if you've got something that's a very, very strong tasting dish, you know, so some sort of with lots of sauce, or, you know, meat with lots of sauce on it, then you're going to want a powerful red wine to match that. Otherwise, you won't taste it. If you've got some very delicate, you know, like sole or some very delicate fish, then obviously putting red wines can just swamp the taste of the fish. Whereas if you have a white wine, so it's just the lighter the colour, the lighter the flavour. And just, although the flavours, having said that, if you're just tasting the white wines, you're going to get a lot of different flavours if you practice at tasting it. If you're eating it with something that's much stronger, it's just going to swamp it, and you're not going to taste those subtleties. So just go for the stronger wines for the stronger tasting food, and you know, just use that as a general guide. But it is about practice, because as John said, then if you practice and you sort of narrow down where you're going, that's your palate. But you know, the other problem then is if you're, for example, taking a young lady out and she likes white and you like red, you're probably going to choose white, aren't you?
Let's get one of each.
He'd be driving.
I'm driving.
Oh dear, oh well, yeah. Fair dues.
Now, I know that you said that so at the moment you drink Pinot Noir is one of your wines, and you also drink Malbec, I believe.
Yeah, I prefer red wines to white wines, to be honest, and I've always found kind of rosés to be. I've never really drank rosés, to be honest, but yeah, I drink a lot more red wine than I do white.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I thought what we'd do is we try taking the lead from your Pinot Noir. We'd try something that's a little bit different for you. It's not quite white. It is rosé, so it's, as I say, just try something a little bit different. But it is a blend of grapes, but it has got Pinot Noir in. It'll be coming out on the right of the screen there. You can see it, the bottle there. It's an English wine. So we'll have a taste of this and see what you think. Be truthful though. If you don't like it, that's fine. It's just to try. Okay. Just to try. So we want to take a. John, do you want to have a go at seeing what you can taste in this?
I do want to have a go, yeah. It smells very light, doesn't it? Where in England? You said it's an English one? Okay.
What can you taste? It's
just like champagne.
For me, it tastes appley.
Yeah.
You know, the apples are in there, but a lot of them.
Can you taste strawberry?
Not strawberry, but then I've got to get into it yet. But for me, the more it's like you know, like sometimes you can have that crisp green apple. This is more like the red, you know, a red apple, like lush.
And the
juicy.
apple bit, Chris, is why you're tasting champagne. This can get an appley tasting champagne.
Yeah, it gets strong on the end, on like the after flavour.
This might be really strange, but I'm tasting melon.
Melon?
I don't know why, but
No, if that's what you're tasting,
that's what I'm tasting.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Again, with it being subjective, we all pick out those certain things in there. So there's not much on the nose there, can't get.
And the noises I always thought were for effect, but actually drawing in air, mixing it with it does bring out the taste.
What are you doing there with the?
It sounds really odd, and you know, I don't even know you're doing it anymore. But every time, what you're doing basically is like when you get the glass, first of all, you know, you swirl it around. That's to get the air in there, so it gets more on the nose, and then that actually is necessary because as you kind of suck in the air in all over your tongue, it releases more of the flavour. So although when you're tasting it just normally, the flavours can be subtle. If you get that bit of air, it just helps pull out those flavours a little bit more. I know it does look and it sounds a bit odd, but it is a necessity. I remember my first, you know, when I first started doing it. And we go to like the big tastings and the big like 200 wines to taste in these, and we literally do have. You've got to remember every single wine tastes different. Every single wine does taste differently. But I know what it's like. You know, one night you might have one bottle of wine, then next night you might have another bottle, and you just think just tastes like wine, doesn't it? But putting them back to back, you get to see those differences. And when we go to the tastings, we have this list of things we have to tick off, and it got very subtle, everything, you know, the colour, the nose, there's probably about 4 sections on the nose, and then the actual flavour, you know, how powerful it is, what you can taste, the after flavour, the acidity. There's so many little things that we need to check, and that, you know, everyone does taste differently, but it's fine, you have to describe absolutely every little bit in there. So to get the ultimate, or as much as you can from it, we do have to do that. But I remember the first time I went to one of these tastings, and it's full of all these old boys and ladies going all slurping and things. The worst thing is they've got, because again, people say when you go to the tastings, you see them spitting it out, and they say, "What are you doing that for?" You know, kind of thing. But that again is a necessity, because after about probably 6, 7, 8 tastes of wine, actually drinking it, your taste buds actually become numb. So it's no good, you know, there's no point tasting anymore. So if you spit it out and like have little crackers in between, it helps keep your taste buds clean. So you can make the you know, the perfect kind of taste. And generally what we'll do, if there's so many, we'll probably knock it down to about 50 wines. We'll do our tasting, then we'll decide which one was the nicest, and we'll go back and have a decent glass and celebrate with that kind of thing. But it's just little tips like that. But I don't even know I'm doing it. Usually, if we've gone to a restaurant, I'll taste it first and get that, and then and once you've got that out of the way, then you can just start drinking without slobbering everywhere. But yeah, these spittoons are disgusting. You know, most people are very good at getting it in there, but there's usually about a metre around, which is
people have dribbled.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can't do that yet, but it's disgusting. Yeah.
I think one of the things is that we obviously with this wine doesn't give us the opportunity to, but it's quite often you can, if you take the time to actually just smell the wine before, sometimes you can get completely different tastes than you do actually when you're tasting it, you know, drinking it. And I think the other thing to remember is that I believe 80% of your taste actually does come from your nose. So when you're drinking it, actually, it's different, but it comes back up through your nose, and that's where you get the taste. So you can actually, if you take your time it wouldn't work with this particular one because this isn't giving anything off. But if you, especially with reds, some whites actually, aren't they? Some where you sort of get a little peach or apricot, whatever. Then you get something out. But actually, you know, smelling it and just appreciating it and trying to think, is this going to taste like this when I drink it? And then comparing the two tastes. Again, it's just part of the experience. And it depends whether you want to neck a drink or whether you want to taste it. And you know, there's nothing wrong with either. It's up to you and your own preference.
But yeah, I mean, there are wines which you can. I mean, Rioja is one of my favourites, and I could spend 10 minutes, you know, getting that on my face and appreciating everything in there. But then sometimes, I mean, we've tasted many times, haven't we, John? We're smelling it, we're thinking, oh, we've got this and this, and then we have a taste that it's not there. It's not there. So, but then that's what I describe would be a good wine, where you can smell and you're thinking, right, I can smell the blackcurrant in there, and then you taste and think it tastes of blackcurrant. That would be the telling for me of a good wine, as opposed to smelling blackcurrant and then I'm going to go and think it's just thin and nothing there.
Yeah.
So if you can correlate the two, the smell, the nose and the palate together, then that would be good.
Yeah.
And it's almost like good training, you know, if you're wanting to enjoy the wine, that's good training as well, having a little sniff and then having a taste and see if you can get the two together.
Good.
It's always good to have a kind of chart as well of the. I mean, because we used to have these things back in the wine world, right? I'd have a chart of, you know, like a pie chart almost of different flavours and different smells, and that can release quite a lot of information for you. You know, if you are having a taste or a smell of the wine and you're thinking, what is that? And you just have a look on this and yeah, that's where it is there. And so you can relate more that way.
Yeah, because you say sometimes if you haven't got a sort of expert with you, you can just look at that and say, what am I tasting? And you look and then you just look around, that's it. That's what I'm tasting, yeah.
Yeah, but they, you know, there are some very odd terms as well, which they use, aren't they, for...
Yeah.
Ronchon. It's a rather ronchon colour, this is it? No, but I can't even say it, vegetal, like rotting vegetables, that's one of the things.
Forest floor is another one, yeah.
And again, if you were to look at that and kind of think, what are they on about? But then if you actually get one that does have that smell and taste, you'd be, oh yeah, that is
and with Riesling you can quite often get petrol out of the taste. And then the other one is Sauvignon Blanc, you can get cat's pee.
Oh, yeah, a lot.
And that sounds awful, but when you actually taste it, it's not that it tastes awful, it's just that it's got that link to
and I mean, that's a really good example as well, because in my years of tasting Sauvignon, and I've used it in my tastings, when I do my private tastings, many a time I'll say, to the room, you know, I've never tasted this in there, but you can have like this gooseberry, there's all the other flavours and notes that you can get, but some people can smell catwee. So I've never got that, but then you put it out and, you know, about a third of the room will say, yeah, I can smell it. But I've only ever got it once in all the time I've been drinking Sauvignon or smelling, all the time he's smelling Sauvignon, I only ever got it once when we were tasting, we did a review, didn't we? I can't remember which Sauvignon it was.
It's a while back now,
But that's it, and I've been doing it for 20 odd years, never, up until that point. But then I realised that some people do, and then when you say it, people say it, hands up.
Yeah. So now we're going to taste some red wine and see if we can actually sort of, we mentioned earlier about the fact that with red wine you can actually get some aromas from the glass rather than as we did with the last, the rosé, which you couldn't. So if we have a little sniff of this, and then we'll be guided by John. Well, you guys say what you smell, if you smell anything. Don't
so firstly, should I be swirling it around?
Swirling around, yeah. If you get a swirl around, it just kind of gets lets the air get into there a little bit.
Sorry, John, I probably put too much in that glass for you, didn't I? Sorry.
No, you're fine. So there's no such thing as too much, John.
Well, except there is. If you, because it really irritates me in restaurants when they fill it right up, and then you can't swill it without actually splashing it over the side. So
a glass of wine.
Yeah, so you should actually just have it about a third, and then so you can give it a swish around. And then smell.
Yeah, get your face right in there and get a good kind of lungful of it. And some of it is like, there's some that will hit you straight away, and then as you pull it away, you can get some subtle ones as well. But again, we once read something about the hand thing, wasn't there?
Yeah. That you're supposed to close your eyes, put your hand out, sniff as you do it. Excuse me, and then at some point when you move your hand, you'll get to a point where you can smell it, and it's supposed to just help you concentrate on. It's never worked for me.
No, I mean, I've never got that. But one of the things is, you know, closing your eyes will help, because it's all different. No. Well, the different, you know, the nose is a sense, isn't it? So if you even as much as closing your eyes, just helps you concentrate more on the. But
I often get told about the legs on a glass of wine as well. Is that a thing that you should look for at all?
Not really. The legs just really about the alcohol. It doesn't determine what's a good or bad wine, because I do hear that often as well. But no, it's just the alcohol content in there.
So when people say it's got legs, it's a little.
It's just something for you to say about it. It doesn't. Yeah, and another thing is when you are in the restaurants, as John was saying there. Sometimes they come along and they let you taste it first, or they'll pour the bit of wine into your glass. Now this was originally back in the day when all wines were corked as such. So some wines would go off on the cork. It was only about 1%, and so a lot of people went onto the screw caps, or Stelvin enclosure is the posh name. But when they were pouring that, they were just to see if it was corked or not. It wasn't to see if it suited your food or anything like that. So if you know, if they are coming along and if it's a screw top and they're pouring a little bit for you to try, it'd be absolutely fine, because usually it's just a bit of them mocking you a little bit, because it's like, you know, they know it's not corked, it's got a screw cap on it.
The only thing you're actually testing for is whether it's corked or not.
That's exactly it, yeah, usually.
And if if a wine is a screw cap,
Yeah.
are they generally the worse wines than the ones that have got a cork in them?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. The screw cap came about because, as I said, 1% of all wine tends to be corked. Now, to you and I, 1% is nothing, you know. But to the big boys who are producing millions of bottles a year, that's quite a lot of money that they were losing. So they developed that. And they've tested it with wines. They've aged it with wines, or they've aged wines within a screw cap bottle, and it's worked absolutely perfectly. And 100% of it is fine. So when it first started coming out, a lot of people were dubious about it, and they thought it was a cheaper wine thing. But I mean, we've got Cloudy Bay, which is 35 quid a bottle, comes in a screw cap. It's a lot of French, a lot of Italian, a lot of Spanish still tend to keep the cork on there. Just it's a tradition, I suppose. But it doesn't make any difference to the quality of the wine, whether it's screw top or a cork. But if it does have a cork, it is better to just taste it to make sure it's not corked. And when I say corked, you that musty, kind of mushroomy smell, you know, foistiness, which 90% of the time is very obvious, but then when you taste it, it's very obvious, because really, when people talk about wine tasting like vinegar, that's exactly what a corked wine is.
Okay. So when someone brings a wine with a screw top on it,
yeah,
and they actually tell you to taste the wine, they're
yeah,
just taking the piss out of it.
More or less, yeah. They know, yeah. It's a tradition that they've always had, though, isn't it? When they are in the restaurants to pour you the wine so you can taste it, and a lot of people do think it is to see if it matches your food, but your food's not even there. It stems from back in the day when you would taste it to see if it was corked.
Interesting.
And yeah, I think it's not, they're not taking the mickey out of you. I think it's more that that's what's expected, and it's all part of the drama of dining out. So
yeah,
I don't think necessarily they're taking the mickey out of you, rather than they're just trying to give you that sort of ambience of being served
it's
on.
theatre, isn't it? Because that's
yeah,
half of it. So yeah, but just know that you don't need to.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when people do that, I normally say, no, that's fine, I'm sure it'll be okay. Or the other thing that I've seen people do is just not actually drink it, just go, that's fine. And
is it not to tell if it's off as well? Or
yeah, that's the same thing, whether it's corked or off.
Okay.
But
when you say off, because a corked wine does tend to be, when a corked wine, it just means that the air has got into it a little bit and it becomes oxidised. Right. So the wine has gone off. That's what it'd be.
So I always think of corked wine as when the guy's putting the man or the woman, he's putting the screw into the wine, and it goes through the bottom of the cork. Yeah. And that's when I think that's cork.
Right, that's probably my fault, because I've not explained what corked means properly, have I? So okay, no, there is that when the cork does go through the bottom. That actually doesn't really affect it at all. You might have a little bit of cork in your. In fact, my wine last night was corked when somebody opened it. There was loads of bits of cork in the actual bottle, in the glass, but it actually doesn't affect the flavour. I mean, it's not very nice having to kind of pick it out or what have you, but it doesn't affect it. Whereas when I say corked, what I mean by corked is off or oxidised. That means where
the cork has shrunk.
Yeah, your cork has shrunk, and basically the air has managed to get into the wine, and that's when it's. So you like when you see a lot of corked wines are stored sideways, and that's just to make sure the cork is always wet. And then when the cork is always wet, it's always expanded, so it's safe most of the time. Whereas if you were to stand it up, the cork dries out because it's not touched with the wine, so it's drying out more and more. And one of the things we say to lots of people, you know, a lot of people get champagne for a special occasion, and then they save it and they save it and save it and save it for a special occasion. A lot of times they'll store it in the kitchen, stood up, so your cork's deteriorating, and also when the kitchen's the only room in the house where it's getting warm and cold and warm and cold, and that's the worst thing you can do for wine. You know, it doesn't matter if it's too warm or too cold, as long as it's consistent or constant. As long as the temperature's constant, you're fine. But when they're warming and cooling, that destroys your wine, especially if you've got, and these people who spent loads of money on this beautiful champagne, and then they come to it on that special occasion and it's just ruined because it's corked. I mean, my friend for her 21st got a bottle of champagne at her house the other day, and it's still there. I'm saying, what are you doing? Well, saving it for a special occasion. It could be a Tuesday. Just drink it. Just drink it.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so in terms of the smell, have you?
I've just been drinking. I'm making an apology. Go on.
Are you getting anything out of it or not? You don't have
not
to.
Much.
No,
it's fine. See what I would get.
Chris, are you getting anything out of it?
No, not particular.
You just smell wine,
like
but
wine,
yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Red wine, that.
Yeah, I know exactly. Okay, come on, join the team. No, I know exactly what you mean, and this is why doing this right now with this one wine, it is quite difficult for us to be able to say what it does or doesn't smell like, because it smells like wine. That's why when we're lucky, we get the opportunity to do them back to back, and we get to smell quite a lot and taste quite a lot. But for me, that's when you can differentiate what the kind of smells and the flavours are. I mean, for me, there's the black currant in there for me, and it's kind of plummy,
Yeah,
rich,
plummy.
earthy.
Plummy is what I got.
Yeah. But again, you don't have to. It's not something, you know, we're putting you on the spot here and saying, you know, this is just what I can taste, what you can taste or smell. You don't have to be able to do that. As you get more, though, you'll recognise when we say certain things, because for the longest time, John, and still now, like in Rioja for me, leather is the big thing. You can smell loads of leather, and I'd say it enough times, and John was always like, I can't get leather in there, I can't get leather. And so it's fine if you can't get leather, but now it's come to the point where John goes, he doesn't think it is leather, but he says that's leather. He says I know what you mean now, but because he smelled it so many times in these wines that I've said, that's where it is.
I don't associate with leather, but I know when I smell that, that's what John thinks is leather. Yeah, he uses different leather to me, obviously.
It's a definite smell in there that clicks in my head as leather, and it happens a lot, and so that's where it becomes subjective again. So after tasting more and more, it's just a minefield, and it's something you just have to really get into.
So when you say leather, what are they putting in to make it smell, make this smell like leather?
It's the characteristics of usually Tempranillo grape, like the characteristics of all that are certain. Let's say Shiraz, for instance. Shiraz, you're almost guaranteed it should taste like blackcurrant, spicy and almost peppery. And that's when we're tasting it and we're saying, you know, it's a nice wine, but it's not blackcurrant, spice and pepper. So in that respect, it's not really the best Shiraz we've tasted. So we'll bring the scoring down there. So Tempranillo generally for me does have a leathery. It's nothing they've put in there. It's just a natural thing from the
chemical compounds from just the process it goes through, and also it picks up from the oak, from the wood barrels that it's in. It just picks up over the time. So it's just a result of that.
Yeah, because I mean, when we look at it, what is it? It's just grape juice, isn't it? That's all it is. But there's massive industry just growing off the back of this, and rightly so, because they are all different. They all have their own little things about them and nuances, and I suppose it is difficult when you first get into it to start it. I mean, you know, I will openly admit when I first came into this trade, I wasn't interested. You know, I was a young boy, I was 16, and when I first started working at Chervik's, and I wasn't interested in wine and cheese, or I was interested in cider and girls, so, you know, it really was a long time ago. A very long time ago. But no, you know, the gentleman who, Tom Chervik, if you ever watched this, who started me on my wine journey again, he almost used to, not force me to, but he got me, my taste buds were 16, I was young, they were impressionable, and, you know, he took all the complete snobbery out of it for me. You know, he taught me what I should be looking for, whether I got it or not. He taught me what I should be looking for, and then to try and find it. And so over the course of a few years, you know, I begrudgingly was drinking the wine. You know, the same, I love the alcohol, so, you know, I'm drinking it for that. But then things started to click in, and said, yeah, that's what that does taste like. So I was just very lucky to do that. And now, of course, I love wine. It's a career, and it's a hobby, and it's a passion.
So taste-wise, have you tasted it yet? Or you?
Tasted it.
Yeah,
it is very nice. Very nice.
Nice and rich, isn't it? Yeah. The blackcurrant really comes through on the flavour there for me.
I always kind of smell cherry or
Cherry's a good. Cherry is very. We tend to find that in a lot of wines. It just seems to be something that you can pull out. And you can have the black cherry and the red cherry, because the black cherry we find a lot. I mean, even in the flavour there, it's the blackcurrant and blackberry I get in there as well. But it's also quite nice on the tongue.
This isn't that expensive. This is one of Aldi's exquisite range. I think it was probably about £7-8 something, and that's all up.
I mean, you don't have to go wild for when you're choosing wines, because you know, that's another thing, isn't it? When people, because you can't go stupid with your wines. You know, I've tasted wines at £2,000 a bottle, and they say, where do you draw the limit? Is that wine worth £2,000? It's not worth £2,000 at all. but it's something that was quite exclusive. You know, there'll be so many bottles of that left in the world, so that's where that price would come from. Nothing I can think of in the wine world or the whiskey world or the gin world tastes like it should be worth £2,000. You know, I've often said my limit would be about 15 to 20 pounds in a retail outlet, and that would be my limit.
Has there ever been an expensive bottle that you thought, yeah, I can see why that's very expensive?
Yes, but not to that extent. Yeah, there are some which do stand out, and you think, yeah, that, you know, I will pay that for that. But it is, again, because wine, again, we've said this many times, but it's a mood thing, and it's an enjoyable thing. Like, I use this as an example. A lot of people go on holiday, and because they're relaxed and stress-free, carefree, on the beach or wherever, and they're enjoying, you know, sangria tastes nice when you're on holiday, because there's no, you know, anything tastes nice. And then you come back to this country, and, you know, you've had a stressful day at work, you go home, you open the bottle, and it's like, bloody hell, it's horrible, because you're stressed, and it's been proven that these react. So some things really complement certain times. I mean, I had a Chateau Lafite Rothschild. It was about 1,800 quid a bottle, and that I thought that was lush. But I wouldn't have paid 1,800 quid for it. You know, I might have paid 50 quid for it, because it was an experience. It really was an experience. But I wouldn't pay. I mean, unless, you know, I was rich. It's all relative, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's why it's actually down to experience. It's actually, you know, say I've tried that bottle, and if you've got sort of, you know, you're a millionaire and you've got lots of dosh, then why shouldn't you just try something because you can,
yeah.
And that's what hypes the price up. I think you've often said that sort of like, I think you quite often use 35 quid as the sort of marker, that above that, actually, you're not paying for the quality of wine, you're just paying for the name.
For the name or something exclusive, yeah. In a restaurant, it's a different kind of thing, you know, you tend to find you do have to pay. But I think in a restaurant, it's a lot of time they're making the money from the wine and the drinks as opposed to the food. So, you know, I say fair play on that thing. We once had a gentleman came in the shop. It was a while ago now, and he brought this, what was it called now? Fantastic dessert wine. I'll remember the name before the end. And it was a 1945 dessert wine. And the lad came in and he was saying, you know, I found this. His granddad apparently passed away, unfortunately. And he said he found this bottle and said, do you think it's worth anything? And wrapped up in a Tesco's carry bag and everything. So I got it out and I think, I recognised it. I thought, yeah, that is. I'll just go double check. So I looked in my books and I found it, and that was £2,000 a bottle. So I went back downstairs and was chatting to the gentleman, and I said, yeah, £2 is that? And he said, well, what do you think I should do with it? And I was like, well, you know, you didn't pay that money for it, you're never going to get one of these again, so if I were you, I'd just drink it. And he was like, oh, I'm in an hour, and he goes, well, I did find two, so I think he gave one to auction, then he drank one himself. He didn't even invite me. Didn't even invite me after all that, yeah.
Oh.
I know.
Should have said it was worth nothing.
I should, yeah. I could have. I'll give you £5 for it, kind of thing. I'll take
from Tesco, it's still in the bag.
You got a receipt for it? Bless him. I wonder how we got on with that. But no, I say he's very, again, subject. It's trial now. You just need to get stuck in there and drink as much. I would recommend drinking as much as you can whenever you can.
I think the important thing is rather than drinking as much as you can, is to actually try and find opportunity to drink it back to back with other wines. So if you can get some friends that are like-minded, and you can sort of try, you know, so if you've got 5 friends and 5 bottles of wine, so at the end of the evening you got through a bottle each, then just taste them and just talk. I think it's especially amongst guys, I think it can be quite embarrassing. It sounds a bit pretentious. You know, people are not really into it. It's just like an older thing, isn't it? You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like more acceptable for the 40, 50-year-old to be talking about wine like that than it is for
the youngsters,
20-plus-year-old.
I mean, that is the thing, and you're completely correct in saying that. But a lot of my private tastings that I do now, and I do most Fridays and Saturday nights, plus some in the week as well, I'm noticing a much younger crowd come through, and it's really good because they're like interested. You know, like you gents here, you're actually interested and you want to know, because I look, you know, I do some tastings which perhaps not, you know, you never know who's coming through the door, never know who's going to be at the tastings. Sometimes you get the people who do know a little about wine, and they want you to know that they know a little bit about wine. Whereas my favourite groups are always the ones that are interested. They'll come in, just a simple question is, why is that red and that white? What's the difference? What's made that red and that one white? And it's, you know, it sounds like a silly question. It's something they would probably not wanted to have asked amongst their peers. But it's a completely good question. Why nobody's told them how that works? How should they know? So, and we see a lot of that. But yeah, getting a few. That's a really good way of doing it. Getting a few folk together, just saying they'll all bring a bottle of wine in, just watch or have a bit of cheese and salami, and just talk through it. Because again, it's like the blind leading the blind there, but you will find a common ground for each wine, I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah. Good. Well, that's fine. Any other questions? Or for a starter for 6?
That's been great.
Yeah, good.
I think I'm all questioned out. Yeah.
Fantastic. Good. Until the next question pops in your head. Chris, you okay?
Well, it was more the final bit was you were talking about having different cheeses and stuff with wine, and that is like a sort of common sort of post-meal thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are the different cheeses then what can almost activate different taste within the wine?
Yeah, yeah.
You're sort of sampling one glass and you've got 3 cheeses, say.
Yeah.
Do you experience different kinds of
yes.
with the wine? Or?
Yeah, you do. I mean, when I say I do the wine tasting, it is cheese and wine tasting. It's like a cheese and wine pairing. So obviously, doing what I do, I've spent 25 years behind that counter, and that's all I do. Literally, is stand there eating and drinking all day. So I'm trying. I know
Such a tough job.
It's starting to show though, isn't it? But it is. But then again, I will throw in that it's personal, because sometimes I find that one cheese works so well with the wine. So when I'm doing a tasting, that's what I'll put together. And many a time I'll say at the tasting that if you don't like it, if you don't like the cheese or the wine, that's fine. I'm not gonna, because I won't be offended. We all don't like the same things. But what I want you to do is try it together and see what happens, see if the magic works. And it is brilliant. I love it, because I have some like in my head which I show a lot of the time, because I know that cheese is going to go with that wine. And just seeing the reaction really pleases me, because there's a lot of, like, white wine's quite acidic, so you need certain cheese that has a nice bit of acidity in itself. So something like that sounds boring, but Crumble Lancashire. Crumble Lancashire is quite high in lactic acid. So if you were to match that with a Sauvignon or Chenin, which is high in acidity, which we talked about earlier, which gives you the heartburn, what you'll see is the lactic acid actually cancels out the acidity in the wine, so it really does change it. It makes the wine easier to drink, so you can pull out all those flavours from the wine, and it just makes it a lot softer. And it's brilliant, because usually that would be my first course that goes out. The amount of people you'll see, the wine will go out, and you can see them struggling with it. Same as they might struggle with the tannins, the dryage in the red wine. And then I'll throw out a cheese which eliminates the tannins, which it's got a protein in there that breaks down those tannins, same as the protein that's in a red meat. So those two just work together so well, so you're not getting that dry edge anymore, you're just pulling more flavour. So yeah, there is a definite correlation there between cheeses and wines, or foods and wines in general, but obviously cheese and wine go together so bloody well.
Which is why there's so many cheese and wine parties.
Oh yeah, massive. Yeah, they're crazy. But yeah, if you get a little cheese board together, a few bottles of wine, and you can, and it doesn't even have to be, you don't have to go down all the lines of, is it peppery, is it fruity? It can be just quite simply, do you like it? Yes or no? Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Fine, well, we'll probably round up there, and if you've got any questions, give us an email, use our contact either on the website or through YouTube. Either way, we'll be pleased to get back to you. Until the next time, we're really looking forward to seeing you again. Chin chin.
Chin chin.
Chin chin.